What's up guys, hope everyone is doing well. In this video I'm going to be going over some updates for XRP pertaining to what I pointed out in the last video, going over the behavior of XRP going back to the end of 2020 leading to the beginning of 2021, looking very similar to what it's done recently, and that led to an 80% pullback, which then ultimately did culminate in it going up 1,000% afterwards. But nonetheless, to go ahead and get it started, I want to first talk about this hourly chart here. And if you look here, going all the way back to the end, December of last year, XRP was at around $20, or not $20, $2. Moved all the way up here, as you can see, then started to kind of just chop upwards. There was some bearish divergence here on really all of these indicators. Although there's some hidden bullish divergence as well. I mean, looking currently, RSI is more oversold than it was going back to when it was at $2. So this hidden bullish divergence could sustain the uptrend, and it could break these two trend lines up here, which are daily resistances, and I'll get to those momentarily. But we can see here that there was this ascending zone here of support. Clearly right here you see that the local top was made here at the daily resistance. Rejection was seen here, and ever since then it's just been going down. Recently, in the last 5 hours or so, you can see that the volume picked up. There was a purple, the increasing bearish volume candle here, then high bearish volume vector candles here are the black ones. Right now it seems to be fizzling out a bit. Let's go down to like the 15-minute. We're seeing a bounce here currently, but until it can really get above these upper vector zones here, so I mean, getting back above around 240 and then getting back above at 245 and ultimately 250, which then leads into the daily chart with the daily resistance here. If we look here at those resistance lines, you can see the lowermost with the candle close high December 8th to the 17th, with the wick highs from December 3rd also to the December 17th. You can see these converge roughly right at the same region. It's just approximately $2.50 on the daily. We're starting to see a red candle after these last 4 green candles, up from $2 recently, around 25-26% so far since the recent local high of $2.90. It's down approximately 35%. You can see that there is this vector zone here, around $2.15 to $2.26, one here around $1.46, $2.56, and then this large one down here at around 91 cents all the way down to 55 cents. So just to entertain multiple possibilities, let's say that the 60, 70, 80% worst case scenario, severe significant pullback doesn't happen, which I think there's quite strong reason to believe it will, which I'll get to as the video goes on. But I mean, XRP could come down to the vector zone here, come back above, find support, continue to go higher, especially if Bitcoin starts performing well over the next few days, over the next few weeks, especially leading into, obviously, 15 days from now, Donald Trump will be inaugurated in, ushering in the most pro-Bitcoin, pro-crypto American presidential administration in history, which, fundamentally speaking, landscape just looks absolutely fantastic for cryptocurrency in general, whether it's Bitcoin, altcoins, etc. I mean, XRP also has multiple applications in for ETFs. I mean, there's some sort of probability there that an XRP ETF gets approved. If that happens sooner rather than later, again, there's plenty of fundamental reasons and even technical reasons. Like I said, on the hourly, even on the daily here, there's some hidden bullish divergence with the RSI. Other indicators as well. I mean, I'd say it's relatively minor, but that could sustain the uptrend here without seeing a significant or severe pullback upwards towards 60 to 80%. As I said, went over, towards the beginning of December when I noticed this striking temporal, what could potentially be a doomsday repetition in the price history for XRP, but plenty of reasons to see XRP break and go higher here without going any further than it already has. But really, here are all the patterns I'm going to be going over. there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 specific patterns going all the way back to the end of 2020, where you will see XRP printing very, very similar price performance that ultimately, I mean, generalizing all of these is you can just look at them as basically M patterns, whether it's a simple M or you will see kind of like a triple top M like this, or maybe you'll even see an M that has, you know, 4 peaks that's descending, which would be in the scenario of these 4 here, where these are the bar versions, candlestick versions, and the line versions here, where this is the fractal or the bar pattern from 2020, just 4 years ago, when XRP saw a 250% rise in price, and then it ended up dropping 80%. It peaked out right here, which I'll go to it. As I showed in the last video, we saw this move up to the beginning of December. Going to the weekly, you will see that it specifically peaked out here within the first week of December, which going to where we are currently, can also see again that it happened literally down to the exact, you know, almost precise to the precise day of the 7th within the first week of December, just 4 years later, 2020 to 2024. Clearly, the 4-year time period is very important within cryptocurrency, most notably for Bitcoin with the halving, and you know, the whole, a lot of times people will bring it up with the phases and or the cycles, 4-year cycle for, you know, bear to bull market, but most importantly for the halvings, the fact that every halving is approximately 4 years, and Bitcoin being the prime mover and all the altcoins being in some degree of hysteresis, lagging and an ebb and flow behind Bitcoin, but you know, obviously why all the altcoins, take a look at all the charts and they all look borderline the exact same. But really, the main update is the fact that when I went over this this entire portion here of their current fractal pattern wasn't here. If I can even click the highlighter, all this wasn't here yet, and it was just this simple peak right here. But ever since then, if you haven't already been able to pick it out, they look, you know, insanely similar. You're seeing these kind of descending channel type structures here on these from 2020 to 2024. Outside of that, you're seeing 1, 2, 3, 4 peaks, 1, 2, 3, 4. Obviously, this fourth one is one of the massive 80% pullback. So I mean, down to the base. So I mean, will we see that happen again for XRP? I think it's quite likely, but again, I mean, plenty of fundamental reasons and even technical reasons that not to happen. Obviously, past price performance isn't causally indicative of what is going to happen in the future. You know, history doesn't always have to rhyme or repeat, but this is absolutely down to the temporal confluence on the time span of 4 years, and the fact that the price is even printing the same. Outside of those 4 peaks, you can see the initial top of the impulse here, and then you see this intermediary M, which then leads up into the second top, and then you see the dump. Here with the current price action, you can see the peak of the impulse, you see this intermediary M shape here, you then see this second, the ending top, and then a massive dump. You could also characterize these as, you know, in like some type of downward slanted BART pattern, which I mean, this would actually fall in suit quite nicely with that type of pattern, because typically those will perform something along these lines where it has an impulse, goes sideways chopping, and then basically comes right back down to the base of that initial impulse. If we take it out to each of these 3 here as well, again, more patterns going all the way back to the end of 2020, where we see generally what's happening is, I mean, these are ultimately just massive M patterns, bearish patterns, each of these times, whether, well, I mean, specifically for this last instance right here, it's, this looks the most like a BART pattern, where you can see it just chopped and went right back down, and it was a triple top, or you could characterize it as a type 3M, where you see 1, 2, 3 peaks, whereas for example, going to actually look at these on the price, with clearly this is being what's most comparable in 2020, just 4 years ago, leading to that 80% crash. The second one here is going to be the top of 2021, where you see basically just this type of M pattern here, which also led from top to bottom to a 74% crash. Now, this was the beginning of the bear market, so obviously XRP went down far more afterwards. I mean, in total, it went down 85%. So, I mean, that's basically close enough to an 80% pullback that could potentially be in the making here in terms of some historical repetition. Although I don't think XRP is beginning its bear market. I mean, it could be, but I would say that's not the most likely scenario. But I mean, even if you look here at this other instance of this, there's 5 patterns in total where we're seeing, it seems like XRP likes to set triple tops or these type of M patterns, a type 3M, and then which will begin a significant severe correction here. I mean, you could even see 1 peak here, 2, 3, 4, and then you see the massive dump going back to the 4 peaks I pointed out with currently, and then also in comparison, again, just to point it out here, 1, 2, 3, 4 as well for 2020. You could even look here at this one, which is a bit different, but still relatively the same. Ultimately, this one's a pretty clear M-looking pattern there. You could also kind of point out this is the first peak, second, you could say this is the third, and this is the fourth here. Or you could just say 1, 2, and 3 peaks and kind of look at that as a triple top and kind of just basically simplify this movement here, where you see this first initial impulse or retracement, move back up here to a new local high, move down, and then kind of cut in between this, what would be an ABC-like pattern here towards this local high right here, which would then end up culminating this triple top or this type 3 M pattern towards the downside, which this one from top to bottom was 60%. So I mean, we're seeing 60 to 80% in most of these cases. We could also look at this one again right here, the one that looks more like a BART pattern, and just generally structurally looking at it and then comparing that to what happened in 2020. Right here, just clearly, I mean, it looks very, very, very similar in terms of it going up, chopping out sideways here, and then crashing right back down to where it began from. Again, just to point it out, this one's a very clear triple top here. And I mean, there's other instances I could point out. Those are the main ones that I wanted to go over. Outside of that, if we move to the 4-day, and also point out one of the things I pointed out in the last time I went over this, you can see on the 4-day here, that's after this impulse here, this white candle here, this highly bullish volume vector candle. The next candle here, the week of the 28th, leading into the beginning of December 2020, was an inside candle that was engulfed by the previous candle, and then go towards this purple. In this context, this would be a decreasing bearish volume candle that closed below. You can see right here, closed below this being the mother candle, which then confirmed the bearish nature of an inside candle. They're not inherently 100% bearish, but if you see something like this form, and then you see a candle close below it like this one, then it's a confirmation, which this candle happened to be the wick low and the low in general. The next candle here, ending December, going into 2021, the volume started to kind of just stabilize a bit. Ultimately, what happened here is, let's go to the 2-day. Ultimately, what happened is essentially you saw a M pattern here form that's then flipped into this W, and then afterwards, even after an 80% crash in a bull market, because it's totally, it's normal, not out of the ordinary for altcoins to see 60, 70, 80% crashes in bull markets and still recover and go higher afterwards. After this 80% move, it then proceeded to go a little bit over 1,000% to the 2021 all-time high. Now going to the weekly, We look at the current price action, again, most comparable to 2020. You can also see last high volume vector candle here, this being the mother candle. The next candle is an inside candle engulfed by the prior. So if a weekly candle closes below the mother candle here, at around $1.42, then that will confirm significant, more likely than not significant bullish or bearish downside. So if it goes down 50%, at this point it's down around 35%, 50% or more would take it below $1.42 to $1.40. And then if that ends up happening, I think it could go down 60, 70, 80%. So I mean 60 would be around $1.10 roughly. 70 is going to be around 85 cents, and then pushing 80 is going to be around 57 cents. So generally, let's just kind of round it. Let's say around 55 cents to around $1.10 would be the worst case scenario range. We look here at this massive vector zone. I mean, even just ignoring, you know, all of these, you know, historical patterns that are highly similar, that have always led to massive pullbacks even in bull markets. XRP saw a, what, I think it was almost right on the dot 500% move. I mean, if we go back even further, from July last year, it is up 662%, and most of this move was done in 4 weeks. Literally a month it went up 500%, and so far it's only down 34%. I mean, it's outside of everything else very reasonable that it's going to see a further correction, especially if Bitcoin continues to go down lower over the next few days, the next few weeks, leading into the inauguration. Maybe the price action doesn't do too well leading into the inauguration. After the inauguration, and it ends up, you know, stabilizing, finding a bottom locally, and then moving back upwards. If XRP does initiate a crash, well, not really a crash, no, it's not a crash, more so of a significant and severe pullback, then I would expect it to not take any longer than March. I would say probably what's more likely than not, if it goes 60, 70, 80% towards the downside, it would probably culminate somewhere around, I mean, maybe at latest right here. So maybe see something along these lines towards the downside, or, you know, maybe it kind of stable out sideways a little bit more and then just quickly crashes down, because that's kind of the sentiment we're seeing here with these kind of BART M-like patterns that go towards the downside. We go to, zoom out to around 2017. Ever since then, I mean, XRP, obviously, it was in a multi-year SEC lawsuit that was very obviously suppressing the price and causing issues. People probably didn't want to invest in something that was in an SEC lawsuit, and if it came out bad, then I mean, XRP might not live up to its reputation of potentially being an intercontinental bridging currency, just a general, you know, kind of globalized, you know, currency, whether it's for, you know, like governmental transactions, the enterprise, or, you know, just kind of simple citizen-based, you know, peer-to-peer, smaller level transactions. But I mean, the fact that XRP has been basically in a kangaroo market since May of 2017, you can see here with the floor being around 17 cents and the ceiling being somewhere around $3.20 to around, you know, let's just say around $2.40 here. I mean, it's been in this kangaroo market, just, you know, not really doing much. A lot of people have been pointing out, I mean, maybe we're seeing some sort of symmetrical triangle-like shape here. I mean, the price target of this would be something around, I mean, this would take it up to maybe $15, $20, which, as I've entertained, $20, as you can see here, with its circulating supply of approximately 57 billion, $20 would be just a little bit above 1 trillion. I've said $60 is really my like maximal case, and I think that's getting close to the edge of reasonability, to where it's just starting to get a little absurd, because I mean, $60 it would be borderlining 3.5 trillion, depending upon where Bitcoin goes, according to my price projection of at lowest 170K, but I think there's going to be a sweet spot somewhere around 200 to 250K. I mean, Bitcoin would be worth anywhere from like 3.5 to 4.5 trillion. So, I mean, XRP, $60, I don't know. I mean, I think it makes sense for Ethereum to eclipse Bitcoin market capitalization wise, but XRP doing it, I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible, but I don't think it's too likely for it to happen this time around, given the fact that it obviously has not been confirmed as an intercontinental bridging currency, and all the other things it's, reputation wise has been purported to do and, could potentially live up to. And then also the ETF potentials with the applications. I mean, that could, obviously, I mean, if you look at the Bitcoin ETF, I mean, specifically BlackRock's, I mean, in less than a year, it's doing better than their gold ETF. I mean, it's the best performing ETF in history. I mean, an XRP will, assuming it gets one this year, especially sooner than later, it's probably going to, I mean, obviously, it's going to be very good for the price as well. The people who are applying for those ETFs are going to need to start accumulating it to sell it to those their people, their investors. But when it comes to really the similarities, I mean, the main topic of this and this, potential 80% crash that's on the horizon from back here in 2020, 4 years later, peaking out within the first week of December. There's also, again, I mean, if you look here, again, we're on the weekly, there's the descending macro resistance of 2017. Would make perfect sense for it to come down and retest an 8-year, macro resistance coming down to somewhere around, 90 cents. It would also line up with the 50 EMA band right here. That would be very nice as well to come down there, find support, maybe move up to the base case of here, basically $3 to $5. Maybe it goes to $15 to $20. Maybe it goes to this $60. You know what? Maybe it even goes to $100. People have been throwing out some wild price predictions, such as $100, 300, 400, 500. I've even seen 5-digit price targets. Now, as I said, ETF potentiality, intercontinental bridging currency, and more potentiality. Fundamental landscape looking good for America. I mean, obviously, this is a Made in America crypto, and potentially Donald Trump will make a proposal for Made in America cryptos to be not liable for taxation. So obviously, that's going to bring more people, especially if you're in America. It's going to prioritize buying Made in America cryptocurrencies because, I mean, who wants to pay taxes on your financial investments? It's just absolutely absurd. So that will, I mean, many things, fundamentally speaking, to bring money towards its way. Technically speaking, again, history doesn't have to repeat. Past performance isn't causally indicative of future performance, but I mean, as I've already demonstrated, the similarities between, again, 2020 and now are just wildly, just, I mean, uncanny. I mean, again, just looking at these fractal patterns or these bar patterns, these BART patterns, these M patterns, whatever you want to call it. Again, I mean, just to go over it one more time, because I mean, I don't feel like you can overstate just how this is with the first peak. You see an internal M, and then the last peak, and then a dump. And now we're seeing basically the same thing with the initial peak, an internal M, the second peak that initiates the dump. And like I said, if let's, go back down on the time frame a bit here, go into the daily. Let's go down to the 12-hour actually. And I mean, so far, I mean, it seems to be being rejected here. Let's actually look at the 12-hour resistances here. Seems to be being rejected. I mean, right here, as you can see with the candles. Again, it's also still just finding correlation, confluence within the $2.50 zone until XRP can get above this and, solidify what has been resistance to support. I mean, there's still plenty of logical room and, plausibility to see this, terrible doomsday, severe significant correction all the way down to the bottom of this impulse that it saw recently, just like it's done all of these other times here in the past that I've pointed out, going all the way back to 2020, as I've been showing. But the last thing I want to point out here is if I go back to the weekly, let's look at these indicators, specifically the RSI here. Actually, it's on the daily that I wanted to show this. If you pay attention to the way that the RSI looks, again, you see this, massive impulse of the RSI correlating with the impulse in the price, and then it starts wavering down. There's some bearish divergence, hidden bullish divergence, which could sustain the uptrend without a significant correction. You can see that it was above the 786 here, towards the uppermost bound of the Fibonacci retracement at around 96, 97. Came all the way down to the yellow fib retracement here, the 457. Is coming back up, and right now is finding rejection at the 577, ultimately below the 618. And if we go back to the instance which is most comparable in 2020, you can see that the same thing is happening. A move here all the way up to the top of the fib retracement above the 786. We see the retracement down to the 457, the 382 region, comes back up to around the 577, ultimately below the 618 at the exact same point in time. So right now you see these the two major first peak, second peak dump, with the RSI being basically at the middle ground of around 50. And just to fully clarify this, to go back to currently, again, we're seeing the RSI move up from the same level, 272, up to the top. It's come down to the 457, 382 range, coming up to the 618 at these two peaks here to culminate the sideways chop of the M pattern, BART pattern, whatever you want to call it, however you want to see it. And then if this ends up playing out, we'll see this massive dump here. And I mean, really, like I said, worst case scenario, 60 to 80% pullback down to anywhere from around 55 to 65 cents or so. But ultimately, again, to culminate all of this, going back to the weekly, just because this I think it's quite likely. This is what I lean to. My personal bias is that it is probably going to go down 60 to 80%, at least 50%. Only being down around 35% at this point, but ultimately I don't think it's too much to worry about. Like I said, 1,000% gains were made after the crash the significant pullback in 2020. So I think even if XRP does something like this, I think it's quite likely that it's going to come back up and at least hit maybe $3 to $5. Maybe it'll even go higher, upwards towards 15, 20, 60. Who knows what's going to happen? I don't have a crystal ball. All the fundamentals, the landscape, everything for XRP could go absolutely phenomenal over the next month, 2, 3, leading into the end of the first half of 2025, and it could go completely buck wild. It also could, like I said, in a kangaroo market, maybe XRP ends up dying and it just absolutely tanks. Who knows what's going to happen? But as I said, that was all that I wanted to go over and update in this video. As always, none of this is meant to be financial advice, but all that being said, and everything gone over, I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Ooh, I regret now.